At 70 years old, I never imagined my life would take such a devastating turn. Just 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with severe heart disease. My doctor's words still echo in my mind. If you don't make significant changes now, you'll likely spend the rest of your days in and out of hospitals. Those words hit me like a freight train. 6 months, a cruelly short deadline to save myself from an existence tethered to medical machines and sterile hospital walls. I felt despair clawing at my chest, more suffocating than the illness itself. For decades, I had lived on autopilot, indulging in habits that were slowly killing me without realizing it. My days blurred into a haze of poor diet choices, endless hours sitting idle and ignoring what little energy I had left. Now, staring at the precipice of losing everything, my independence, vitality, and dignity, I knew I couldn't surrender to fate. But where do you even begin when every breath feels heavier than the last? One sleepless night, as panic tightened its grip around my heart, I stumbled upon something online, a glimmer of hope buried beneath layers of fear. It wasn't some miracle drug or expensive treatment. Instead, it was simple yet profound advice. Small, consistent lifestyle changes could transform not just my health, but my entire future. That realization ignited a spark within me, a mix of desperation and determination. What if this was my only chance? Could I really reclaim control over my body and defy the odds stacked against me? But change is never easy, especially when time is running out. Every step forward felt like wading through quicksand, exhausting, uncertain, and fraught with setbacks. Friends dismissed my efforts, saying, "At your age, why bother?" Even family doubted whether someone like me, who'd neglected his health for so long, could truly reverse course. Yet deep down, I knew this battle wasn't just about surviving. It was about proving to myself that I still had fight left in me. At 70 years old, I never thought something as simple as walking could become my lifeline. But here's the truth. Before I started this journey, I was a man who avoided movement like it was poison. Climbing just one flight of stairs left me gasping for air, clutching the railing with trembling hands. My legs felt like lead weights, and every step forward seemed to mock my frailty. "I'm too old for this," I told myself countless times, sinking deeper into the comfort of my recliner chair. Each day blurred into the next, watching TV, eating unhealthy snacks, and ignoring the growing stiffness in my body. It wasn't until that fateful diagnosis shook me awake that I realized how dangerously close I was to losing everything. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. 6 months to turn things around, or you'll spend the rest of your life tethered to hospitals. Panic gripped me, but so did determination. If there was even a sliver of hope, I had to take it. The first habit on the list? Walking. Simple, they said. Easy, they claimed. But nothing about those initial steps felt easy. On the very first day, I laced up an old pair of sneakers, their soles worn thin from years of neglect. As I stepped outside, dark clouds loomed overhead, heavy with rain. "This is ridiculous," I muttered under my breath, already regretting my decision. But I pressed on, forcing myself to move. Within minutes, the sky unleashed its fury. A torrential downpour drenched me to the bone. My cane slipped on the slick pavement, and I stumbled, barely catching myself against a lamppost. Humiliated and soaked, I wanted to give up right then and there. Who was I kidding? A 70-year-old man trying to reclaim his health? Yet deep inside, something stirred, a quiet voice whispering, "Don't stop now." That night, shivering and exhausted, I sat by the window watching the storm subside. Every muscle ached, and doubt gnawed at my resolve. But lying in bed, I remembered Margaret, the woman from the community center whose story of resilience inspired me earlier. She hadn't let grief or loneliness keep her trapped. Instead, she'd embraced new connections and rediscovered joy. If she could do it, why couldn't I? Each subsequent day brought its own challenges. Some mornings, icy winds cut through me like knives. Other days, relentless heat made every step feel unbearable. There were moments when I questioned whether any of this mattered, whether these tiny efforts could truly make a difference. But I refused to let fear win. Slowly, painfully, I built momentum. From 10-minute walks around the block, I pushed myself further each week. I began timing my routes, challenging myself to go just a little farther each time. Then came the breakthrough. After exactly 1 month of unwavering commitment, I found myself standing at the end of a 5-kilometer trail, breathing steadily without a hint of exhaustion. Tears welled up in my eyes, not from sadness, but from disbelief and pride. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel like a prisoner of my own body. My legs, once weak and unreliable, now carried me with strength and purpose. That moment changed everything. No longer did I see myself as someone too old to change. Instead, I became a warrior fighting back against time itself. Walking transformed more than just my physical health. It healed my spirit. On rainy days, I no longer cursed the weather. Instead, I welcomed it as part of the journey. When snow blanketed the streets, I bundled up and marched onward, refusing to let anything stand in my way. Friends teased me, saying, "You're obsessed." But obsession is what saved me. With each stride, I reclaimed not only my vitality, but also my dignity. Looking back, I realized that walking wasn't just exercise, it was defiance. Defiance against the idea that aging meant giving up. Defiance against the notion that my best days were behind me. And most importantly, defiance against the fear that had held me captive for far too long. Today, as I stroll through parks or climb hills with ease, I know this habit will carry me through whatever lies ahead. Because every step isn't just about moving forward. It's about proving to yourself that you're still alive, still capable, and still worthy of living fully. The storm inside me was almost as fierce as the one raging outside. After discovering my blood sugar levels had skyrocketed, I knew my reckless eating habits had finally caught up with me. For decades, I indulged in greasy burgers, sugary desserts, and salty snacks, foods that were comfortingly familiar but silently destructive. These weren't just meals, they were memories. The Sunday roast dinners shared with family, the late night ice cream binges after tough days at work, they were part of who I was. And now I was being told to abandon them all. Giving up these foods felt like losing an old friend, but it wasn't just about saying goodbye to cheeseburgers or chocolate cake. It was about confronting 50 years of deeply ingrained habits. My first attempt at cooking a healthy meal ended disastrously. Overcooked chicken, bland vegetables, and quinoa that tasted like punishment on a plate. "This is ridiculous," I muttered under my breath, staring at the sad remnants of what should have been dinner. Yet something inside me refused to give up. Every step forward seemed like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen. Then came the humiliation. One afternoon, while meeting friends for lunch, I proudly brought along my homemade salad, a colorful mix of spinach, grilled chicken, and avocado. Their laughter hit me like a punch to the gut. "What's this? Are you opening a health store now?" one joked, pointing at my Tupperware container. Another chimed in, "Come on, live a little. You're not getting any younger." Their words stung, not because they were wrong, but because deep down I feared they might be right. Was I too old to change? But the real test came during a family reunion. Kubon Saikai. Buffet tables groaned under mountains of fried chicken, creamy pasta, and decadent desserts. The aroma alone made my mouth water, and before I realized it, I'd piled my plate high with forbidden delights. That night, disaster struck. My vision blurred, sweat drenched my shirt, and panic surged through me as I recognized the symptoms of a potential diabetic episode. It was a wake-up call so loud it could have shattered glass. Lying awake that night, shame burned hotter than the embarrassment from earlier taunts. How could I let myself slip so easily? Margaret's story replayed in my mind, how she embraced new connections despite grief, how she rebuilt her life piece by piece. If she could face loneliness head-on, surely I could conquer my cravings. From then on, I committed fully, not just to eating better, but to reclaiming control over my choices. I started small, swapping white bread for whole grain, sugary sodas for infused water. Each tiny victory fueled my determination. Slowly, the bland quinoa transformed into something palatable, even enjoyable. Cooking became less of a chore and more of a ritual, an act of self-love rather than deprivation. Friends still teased me occasionally, but their jibes lost their sting when they saw the difference in me. My energy returned, my mind sharpened, and I walked taller than I had in years. Looking back, those early struggles seem monumental compared to where I am today. Eating well isn't just about avoiding disease. It's about thriving. It's about proving to yourself that no matter your age, you can rewrite your story. Every bite of kale, every sip of green tea is a declaration of independence from the chains of poor health. Now, when I sit down to a meal prepared with care, I don't see sacrifice. I see strength. Strength to fight another day, to keep moving forward, and to embrace life with vitality. It started with something small, almost laughable, a forgotten name. I was sitting at the dinner table when my granddaughter asked me about an old family photo. "Who's that, Grandpa?" she said, pointing to a man in the picture. The face was familiar, yet his name escaped me completely. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air as panic clawed at my chest. How could I forget someone so close to me? That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by fears of Alzheimer's disease. Every forgotten appointment, misplaced key, or missed birthday suddenly felt like ominous signs of decline. The next morning, I decided I couldn't let this fear consume me. I had already committed to reclaiming my health through walking and better eating habits. Now it was time to save my mind. But what could a 70-year-old man possibly do to sharpen his fading memory? Then I remembered reading somewhere that learning new skills could strengthen neural connections. The idea struck me. Why not learn piano? Music had always fascinated me, but I'd never dared try it until now. With trembling hands, I signed up for beginner lessons at a local community center. Walking into that first class felt like stepping onto a battlefield. My instructor, a kind young woman named Clara, handed me sheet music filled with notes that looked more like hieroglyphics than music. We'll start slow, she assured me, her voice calm and encouraging. Slow didn't feel slow enough. By the end of the hour, my head throbbed and frustration bubbled inside me. Why was this so hard? At home, I sat at the keyboard, pressing keys randomly, hoping some magical rhythm would emerge. Instead, all I heard was discordant noise. Each failed attempt chipped away at my confidence. Things got worse before they got better. One particularly grueling session left me on the verge of quitting. I stared at the page, tears welling in my eyes, as Clara patiently explained the difference between quarter notes and half notes. For the third time. I'm too old for this, I muttered under my breath, ready to walk away forever. But then I thought about Margaret, the resilient woman from the community center who rebuilt her life after losing her husband. If she could find joy again, surely I could push past this moment of defeat. Something shifted after that day. Maybe it was pride, maybe desperation, but I refused to give up. I broke down the challenge into smaller steps, focusing on one note at a time instead of entire songs. I practiced daily, even if only for 10 minutes, letting each tiny victory fuel my determination. And slowly, painfully, progress came. One evening, as I played a simple melody without stopping, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. It wasn't Beethoven, but it was mine, a testament to perseverance. What surprised me most wasn't just the improvement in my musical ability, it was how much sharper my mind became. Conversations flowed easier, names returned quicker, and tasks once daunting seemed more manageable again. Learning piano wasn't just about making music. It was about proving to myself that my brain still had fight left in it. Today, when I sit at the piano, I don't just hear notes. I hear resilience, hope, and the promise of a future where age doesn't dictate potential. The first time I tried strength training, I thought I was signing up for a quick fix, a way to regain some semblance of the strength I once had. But what I got instead was an excruciating wake-up call. My muscles screamed in protest, and within minutes, a sharp cramp shot through my calf like lightning. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my leg, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. The next morning, every movement felt like torture. My arms ached from lifting weights that probably weighed less than a bag of groceries, and my back throbbed as though I'd been hit by a truck. It was humbling, to say the least. But the physical pain wasn't the only hurdle I faced. When my children found out about my newfound commitment to strength training, they were furious. Dad, you're pushing yourself too hard, my Bash Teresa scolded me over the phone. Her voice cracked with worry. What if something happens? You're not 30 anymore. Even my son chimed in saying, why don't you just take it easy? We don't want you hurting yourself. And their concern was suffocating, but beneath their words lay a deeper fear, one that mirrored my own doubts. Was I too old to change? Despite their protests, I pressed on. One day, while attempting squats without proper guidance, I lost my balance and nearly toppled backward. My heart raced as I grabbed onto the wall just in time, narrowly avoiding a fall that could have ended in disaster. That moment left me shaken, but it also ignited a fire within me. If I didn't push past this fear, I'd never reclaim the independence I so desperately craved. I decided to seek help. At the community center where I'd met Margaret weeks earlier, I joined a beginner strength class led by a patient instructor named Clara, the same woman who taught me piano. She showed me how to perform exercises safely, emphasizing technique over intensity. Slowly, painfully, I began to build momentum. Each session became a battle against doubt, fatigue, and the ever-present ache in my muscles, yet I refused to give up. 3 months later, something miraculous happened. My granddaughter came over for a visit, her tiny arms reaching out for me. Without hesitation, I bent down, lifted her into my arms, and held her close. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just because I could finally left her, but because I realized I was no longer the fragile man who struggled to carry his own grocery bags. I was stronger, both physically and mentally. That moment wasn't just about biceps or endurance. It was about proving to myself and to my family that age doesn't define capability. Every squat, every lift, every stretch had paid off. My body, once a source of frustration and limitation, now symbolized resilience and determination. And when my kids saw me playing with their children, laughing and moving freely, they finally understood why I'd fought so hard. Strength training transformed more than just my physique. It gave me confidence. It reminded me that even at 70, I still had the power to shape my destiny. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone capable, vibrant, and alive. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth every ounce of effort, because sometimes the hardest battles yield the sweetest victories. The weight of loneliness pressed down on me like a suffocating shadow after my wife passed away. For decades, she had been my anchor, my confidant, and the light that filled even the darkest corners of our home. But when she left, so did everything that made life feel meaningful. Days blurred into nights, and I found myself trapped in an endless cycle of grief and despair. Depression crept in like a thief in the night, stealing what little joy remained. It wasn't just sadness, it was a paralyzing emptiness, as though a piece of my soul had gone with her. One day, while scrolling through old photos, I stumbled upon a picture of us laughing at a community picnic years ago. The memory hit me like a tidal wave, but it also sparked something unexpected: hope. Margaret's story from the community center echoed in my mind, how she rebuilt her life after losing her husband. If she could find purpose again, maybe I could too. But the thought of stepping out into the world felt insurmountable. Social gatherings, clubs, conversations, they all seemed alien now, like relics from another lifetime. Still, deep inside, I knew isolation would kill me faster than any illness. Summoning every ounce of courage, I decided to join a local book club, a small step toward reclaiming my life. Walking into that room for the first time felt like walking onto a battlefield. My palms were sweaty, my heart raced, and self-doubt screamed louder than ever. When I introduced myself, the group barely acknowledged me. Their polite smiles felt distant, almost dismissive. Weeks passed, and despite attending regularly, I struggled to connect. One evening, during a heated discussion about poetry, someone remarked, "You're awfully quiet. Do you even enjoy being here?" The words cut deeper than intended, leaving me questioning if I truly belonged. Humiliated and defeated, I considered giving up. Yet something within refused to let go. I remembered Clara's advice about perseverance, the same determination that helped me learn piano and rebuild my strength. So I kept showing up, forcing myself to engage, even when it terrified me. Slowly, cracks began to form in my shell. A kind woman named Evelyn started sitting next to me, asking gentle questions about my favorite books. Her warmth reminded me of my late wife's compassion, and over time, conversations flowed more naturally. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a holiday gathering, Evelyn shared stories of her own struggles after losing her partner. We sat together under twinkling lights, two souls bound by shared pain, yet finding solace in each other's company. That night, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Over months, our friendship blossomed into something deeper, a love neither of us expected, but both desperately needed. At 75, I discovered a second chance at happiness, one I never thought possible. Looking back, I see how far I've come, not just emotionally, but physically and mentally. Reconnecting with others reignited parts of me I thought were lost forever. Every conversation, every shared laugh became fuel for my spirit. Loneliness no longer defines me. Connection does. Today, Evelyn and I walk hand in hand, proof that life doesn't end with loss. It transforms, offering new beginnings if we're brave enough to embrace them. For decades, my evenings ended the same way, curled up on the couch, remote in hand, watching TV late into the night. It was a ritual I cherished, a comforting constant in an ever-changing world. But as I entered my 70s, that harmless habit became a dangerous enemy. Sleep eluded me like a thief slipping through shadows. I'd lie awake for hours, tossing and turning, only to drift off briefly before dawn. Most nights, I barely managed 2 or 3 hours of restless sleep. Exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. But breaking free from my nightly routine felt impossible. The breaking point came one fateful morning. I was driving to meet Evelyn, my newfound love, at her house when fatigue overtook me. My eyelids drooped, heavy as lead, and for just a moment, I lost control of the wheel. The screech of tires against asphalt jolted me awake. But it was too late. My car had veered dangerously close to oncoming traffic. Shaken and trembling, I pulled over, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. That near accident wasn't just a wake-up call. It was a deafening alarm screaming at me to change. But old habits die hard. Every night I told myself I'd turn off the TV early. Yet there I was, glued to the screen until midnight rolled around. It's what I've done for years, I reasoned with myself, even as dark circles deepened under my eyes and exhaustion clouded my mind. Then came the day I couldn't ignore the toll any longer. After weeks of chronic sleep deprivation, I collapsed while gardening, a simple task that once brought me joy. When I woke up in the hospital bed hooked to IV lines, reality hit me like a freight train. If I didn't prioritize sleep, I wouldn't just lose my independence. I might lose my life. Determined to reclaim my health, I made radical changes. First, I banished the TV from my bedroom, replacing it with books Clara recommended during our piano lessons. Instead of late-night shows, I adopted a calming bedtime routine, reading poetry aloud or practicing gentle stretches inspired by Margaret's wellness tips. Some nights were brutal, the silence felt deafening, and cravings for my old routine gnawed at me. But I refused to give up. Slowly, miraculously, sleep returned. Nights stretched longer, dreams grew vivid, and mornings greeted me with clarity instead of grogginess. Looking back, I realize how much damage those sleepless nights inflicted, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Each hour of rest became a lifeline, replenishing my strength and sharpening my focus. Today, I cherish sleep not as a luxury, but as a necessity, a sacred act of self-care that keeps me present for the people and passions I hold dear. Without it, I wouldn't have survived this journey. With it, I'm thriving. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I ran into an old acquaintance, Michael, at the community park. Years ago, he had mocked my decision to overhaul my lifestyle. At our age, what's the point? He'd scoffed, shaking his head as I laced up my walking shoes for the first time. Back then, his words stung, but they also fueled my determination. Now, seeing him again brought a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Michael sat in a wheelchair, his once robust frame now frail and diminished. "Remember when you said I was crazy for trying to change?" I asked, forcing a smile. He nodded slowly, his eyes clouded with regret. "I didn't believe you could do it," he admitted, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Now look at you, walking, laughing, living fully. And here I am, stuck in this chair, because I ignored every warning sign." His hands trembled as he gestured toward his legs. A stroke last year had left him paralyzed, a consequence of years spent neglecting his health despite repeated doctor's warnings. His confession hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about Michael, it was a stark reminder of how fleeting life can be if we choose complacency over action. Every step I took now felt heavier, not from physical strain, but from the weight of responsibility. I realized that sharing my journey wasn't just personal growth, it was a lifeline I could extend to others. "You're not too late to start," I told him firmly, gripping his shoulder. "Even small changes can make a difference." But deep down, I knew the truth. Timing matters. Waiting until disaster strikes often robs us of choices we once had. As I walked away, leaving Michael lost in thought, I couldn't help but reflect on my own battles. The sleepless nights, the falls during squats, the tears shed while learning piano. Each struggle was worth it because I acted before it was too late. The message is clear. It's never too late to transform your life, but don't wait until circumstances force your hand. Start today. I'm sorry. Right now, while you still have the power to shape your tomorrow.